Alrighty, good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Sharpless. Hopefully you guys are off to a great Wednesday so far. So as promised, I told you for your guys' build quality orientation, unfortunately we don't have the ability to meet on site out here today since we've kind of gone to this whole virtual thing through this whole COVID experience, but I definitely appreciate you guys kind of bearing with us throughout this whole journey. And I know it's kind of frustrating not being able to get out here on site and actually conduct the orientation that we talked so much about at the introduction walk, but without further ado, we're still going to get in here. We're still going to conduct all the stuff that I would normally do at a build quality orientation. And then I'm going to couple that with a PowerPoint presentation that I give you guys that kind of goes through a few more of the things. I would like to try to keep this video somewhat short. Typically a build quality orientation takes me about 2 hours to get through, sometimes even longer than that. And I try to hit just about every detail in your house that I can. But where I can kind of cut some of that time out is that PowerPoint that I send you. You're going to see some of the stuff on that PowerPoint that you do have inside your home that you can read up on that PowerPoint. It'll kind of give you some more insight as to what's being installed in your home. The whole point of today, essentially, obviously, is to get you guys inside your home, see what's going on behind the walls. It's again, one-of-a-kind thing that Pulte likes to do for our homeowners, just to give you a good feeling, before we actually cover the walls with sheetrock, exactly what's going on behind there. You've got a little bit of knowledge of some of the processes that go into building the house, all the way through the rough-in stage. And then, so definitely, hopefully you guys learn a few things in this presentation today. But the main point of today, obviously, is from the build quality introduction that we did. We talked about the contract, and I told you these little purse sheets that I have right here. I took a ton of notes as far as these structurals and some of the design features that you guys have inside your home. So I'm going to be going through the house. We're going to talk about some things, and as I'm going through the house, we're going to talk about you guys' structural options. I'm sure you guys have been inside and kind of noticed, what's been installed already. And of course, if you guys have any questions about an option that you think you should have and it might be missing, or any other question that you guys might have, feel free to reach out to me, call, text, shoot me an email, and I'll definitely do my best to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. But let's go ahead and get started with the meeting here. Hopefully the video concept isn't too hard to follow for you. Try to hold my hand as steady as possible. I always like to start my meetings out here in the garage, and the first thing I always like to talk about with my homeowners is their concrete. So obviously you don't have the driveway or the sidewalk or anything like that in quite yet. That's one of the things that we do a little bit further on in the build, just so it doesn't get damaged throughout the rough-in portion of construction. We can get all those people on and off site without damaging more concrete. So that leaves us with the foundation of the home. So the foundation, the main slab, and then your front and back porch back in the back of the home. So the first thing I always like to talk about is kind of introduce you to your warranty on your concrete. So what our warranty essentially is if you guys have any sort of cracking, whether it's a stress crack, shrinkage crack, any sort of cracking that happens within the slab, what we do cover is a 1/4 inch within that 2-year period. So if a crack happens to open up, let's say this was a crack that wasn't done on purpose. We actually call this a control joint, but let's say this was a crack. This would essentially be able to be covered. So if you actually look at it, you would measure the width of it, and if that was a 1/4 inch or more, we would come in and resurface it or take care of the underlying issue that we would need to get rid of that crack for you. I talked about stress cracks and shrinkage cracks. Those are very, very common cracks that happen within concrete. And what we do to help control that, obviously, these control joints right here. So in the middle of the garage slab that you guys have here, it looks a little bit different than it's going to be inside the house. But the whole point of this is to essentially help us control that shrinkage cracking. We want to be able to allow your concrete to expand and contract without, cracking as much. But if it happens to do so, we give it somewhere to go, essentially. So we divide the house essentially into 10 by 10 or 15 by 15 grids. So if we do experience any cracking, the crack is essentially going to find one of those control joints, and it's just going to route itself right on down the control joint there without veining all the way across your slab if you were not to have any sort of control joint there. So definitely helps improve the overall quality of your slab, definitely helps improve the quality of your flooring that goes in, so you guys aren't having to worry about taking care of concrete, if you guys decide to replace the floors at some point in time. So definitely just a quick reminder, 2-year warranty on the concrete. We basically cover anything that's a 1/4 inch or more, if it's caused by us or, just happens to reveal itself within that 2-year period. We got you covered on the concrete. Moving on, talk about the utility wall here. You got a lot of stuff going on over here on the right side of the garage. A couple things I like to talk about first, this guy being the first thing. This is the main water shutoff that comes into your house. Really cool feature on the house. You guys might be used to having to go out there in the front yard somewhere and find where that water meter is located to shut your water off to the house. But now we make it really easy for you. You just have to come out here into the garage. Right now it's in the on position. You just shut that guy off and you would no longer get water to the inside of the house. You can still go out there to the meter box and still shut the water off that way, but this is actually just a more simpler version of it for you. You see another little water line that comes off there. That's actually a hose bib that's just on the other side of that wall, but you can definitely see where the main water comes into your house right here. So I'll kind of stand back here, give you a good look of what that wall looks like. One of the questions I always get about garages, everybody likes to hang cabinets and shelves and all that fun stuff. So definitely utilize this video, take a look at what we got going on here. Use it as a reference in case you guys ever want to do any permanent features here in the garage, so you kind of know what's going on behind those walls. All right, moving right along. You'll notice some outlets that we have here. We got an optional outlet that we're going to cover here in a second, but we also do have some standard outlets here in the garage. That's going to be one of them right there. And essentially what that's doing is it is a GFI that would essentially control the power to the garage door. That's something that we'll recap on when we get to the pre-closing orientation, but that's just kind of a little introduction to what that's all about. This little guy right here, this is where the main gas line comes into the house. You see it breaks the top plate up there and then runs to the inside of the house there. So, quick note, this is where the main gas comes to the inside of the house. So just on the other side of that wall is going to be where your gas meter sits. Moving right along, this little setup right here, this is going to be tankless water heater. So you got a hot and cold water line right here, and then just to the left of that is going to be your gas line for the tankless water heater. It's obviously a gas operated system. And then of course, if you guys have any questions as far as what we're using for plumbing, this stuff right here, it's what we call PEX pipe. You guys might be used to copper in other places, but we actually use PEX pipe for all of your above ground runs. And then swing inside here real quick. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. For all of your underground plumbing, we use PVC. So essentially everything is plastic. Definitely has some good pros for the homeowner. One of the really cool factors of PEX pipe is it's got better insulative properties. It's more naturally insulated than copper pipe would be. And also, you notice as we start running up through the top plate there, you notice we make these 90-degree bends. We can actually bend that without having to cut it and resplice it. And what that does for you as a homeowner is it creates a lot less leak potential in your home. Whereas if those were copper lines, you don't have the ability to do that quite as much. Depending on the line or the size or the diameter of the copper, you'd have to cut that right there, put a 90-degree elbow, solder it together, creating more leak potential for the house if it were to ever fail. So definitely something that works out for the homeowners, besides just having more natural insulative properties to it. So swing over here on the back wall, you notice a couple things going on here. You got this little wire that's sticking out of the wall there. That's a low voltage wire for the garage door. It's going to be a little indoor push button to control the garage door there. And then just underneath it is going to be a switch for your garage lights. All right, then over here on the back wall, you have another receptacle here. Again, that's just a standard receptacle that we install in all of our garages. And then to the left of that, this is the dedicated outlet that you guys paid for whatever you wanted to hook up there, golf cart, refrigerator, whatever you guys had in mind there. And then we keep on moving over to the left. You got the main electrical panel that comes into the house, and this is where all of your power runs from. So this is the only panel that you guys will have any breakers on inside your home, just right here inside the garage. So if you have any electrical issues inside the house, you just run out here, find the breaker you need to flip off, turn the breaker off, or if you have to reset one, it's all gonna be done from here. We're gonna recap on that a little bit at the pre-closing orientation when that is a little bit more complete, but you can kind of see the rough end of it there. And then moving right along, still moving left, you got another standard outlet. Again, you got about 4 outlets in here, so if you wanted to come in and install some shelving or a workbench, you definitely have plenty of power to plug some stuff in. Then over here looking at the front of the garage, not a whole lot going on here. A couple things I like to talk about, however, would be these two little guys on the right and left side of your garage. Those are actually low voltage wires for your garage door sensors there. Not a whole lot going on there, but I still like to mention it. Before I end up leaving the garage, the last thing I'm going to talk about in the garage is this little tube right here. You guys are probably going to see this on the PowerPoint presentation, but what this is, it's the Home Team Pest Defense System. It's they call it a TAEX system. So this is essentially something that we offer you guys if you want to activate it after closing. We rough this entire tube system into your house to eliminate termites. Not necessarily termites, I misspoke there, definitely not for termites. This is pretty much every other bug except for termites. We run another system called the Centricon system on the outside of the house that will defend against termites. However, this TAEX system right here is going to take care of the ants, the spiders, all that other fun stuff. You guys are going to have the option whether or not you want to use that. Essentially how it works is it's a high pressure system. So somewhere on the outside of the house, you're going to have a couple of junction boxes. All they've got to do essentially to run chemical inside these lines is go to the outside of the house, take the cover plate off the junction box. There's usually about 6 to 7 zones on each one of those boxes that they install where they hook up to them and then they force feed it's a high pressure system, so they use dry nitrogen to force their chemical through these lines. And then these little green tubes right here, they've got little microscopic penetrations in there. You can't really see them or anything. But that chemical would essentially get down to the bottom plate, typically where a lot of those bugs and stuff like to come in. So definitely a neat system, and you're more than welcome to activate it once you guys close on the house. But we'll talk a little bit more about that at the pre-closing orientation also, as far as activation, cost, and all that fun stuff. So definitely a neat system. All right, I don't think I've got anything else. Oh, one more thing here in the garage. Talk about this stuff right here. So right here at the bottom plate, you've got this little material right here. We call this sill sealer. Essentially what it does is it creates a barrier at the bottom plate from either moisture or air getting inside the house. It also helps with bugs getting inside the house. Also on a garage to house wall like you see right here, we also lap it up 2 inches up the face of the stud, and essentially what it does is it creates a better barrier for us against carbon monoxide getting into the house. Obviously, you guys are going to be pulling vehicles into the garage here, so if you're parking a vehicle in here, you got it running. Carbon monoxide is definitely a factor, and that's something that's going to help us create that defense mechanism from that getting inside the house. So kind of a cool little feature. But other than that, that is all I've got for you here in the garage. We're going to keep on moving to the inside of the house. So essentially how the inside is going to work, I just pretty much come right in through the garage to house door here, pick one room, and I make my way kind of counterclockwise or clockwise through the rest of the house. So right now we just entered the house through the garage door here, and we are essentially standing in the planning center area of your home. So the planning center would essentially go right here. One of the options you guys did select to have in the planning center was going to be this TV data drop right here. Something that you guys are going to notice in my house here, I always like to do this. I always like to make sure you got power right next to your TV data lines. It looks like they also came in and ran another power source, so you guys got more than enough power there to have some sort of home office if that's kind of what you guys were going for. So that was definitely a freebie from the electrician. So I'll take what I can get there. You don't have to worry about me charging you or anything for that, and I'm not going to mention it to them. So definitely plenty of outlets here in the planning center. So make a 180 turn here. We're staring at this little cavity right here. Definitely a little space you can put a desk or something like that. You guys did not select that drop zone feature. That's typically where that would be located. But now it's just kind of an optional little space for you to install some sort of a desk or cabinet if you want to. All right, we're gonna walk into the kitchen here. So as we walk through the house, if you see me pointing the camera down at the floor, this is something I like to do in all my houses also. I go through each and every one of these rooms, usually right after framing is done, right before our rough-in start where they do all the electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, and I label the house. So all those notes that I took at the build quality introduction, this is essentially how it translates to your house. I'm able to essentially go into every single room of the house, find the design options that you selected as far as the structurals, and put little notes on the concrete there, on the floor system, or on the studs. This definitely helps my trades be able to work a little bit more efficiently in the house, reduces or minimizes the amount of mistakes that they might make, just kind of makes everything a little bit easier. It helps you guys. You can walk into the house and see exactly what we plan on installing in the house. So it's definitely makes it a lot easier for me and everybody else. So that's just kind of one of the little processes that I have. So while we're staring at the kitchen, the first item of business we can talk about as far as structurals is you guys selected that recessed can option. So you guys have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cans here in the kitchen for that recessed can option. You guys you've also selected that 3x6 desert gray backsplash. So usually on my backsplash walls, something I always like to make sure and do is check those walls to make sure that they're nice and straight, so we don't have a bunch of issues in our tile when we go to set that tile. So you see all my little marks there. I mark studs that are okay. They fix studs that might be a little bowed to make sure that we don't have quality issues in the backsplash. Moving right along, next option we got there, you guys are gonna have cabinet hardware. Not something that we need to really know at this point in time, but definitely a feature in the kitchen I wanna make sure gets installed when they install those cabinets. Next item of business, you got the direct vent right here. So you see that little guy right there is gonna be the direct vent for the canopy hood. And then you guys also have the brush nickel faucet option, or whatever color choice you've selected. Again, not something that we have to know exactly right now, but definitely something I'll be paying attention to once the plumbing fixtures go in. Another option, you guys have these stainless steel gas appliances. So we, again, just want to make sure we have the gas line ran for the appliances here. They're actually coming to install that tomorrow, so I'll be able to verify that that gets installed. No issue there. And then last option here, we got the under cabinet lights. This is always a very important one. These little guys right here, these little white wires that you see sticking out of the wall, these are for the under cabinet lights. I typically look for 4 of those. Sometimes they like to cover those up, so I like to run over to them and make sure they're sticking out, so when they come in and install that sheetrock, they know not to cover those wires up or bury them behind the wall somewhere. But it's definitely good to know I've got 4 of them, so if they do happen to cover it with sheetrock, I know where to find it. And then, of course, you see all the outlets and stuff that you guys have that are installed, for the standard outlet features in your backsplash. A lot of the reason that they install these specific outlets is for code purposes. We have to have the amount of outlets that we have there to make sure we are in line with the municipality and code. So obviously the sink is going to be sitting right there, that window centered above it. And then you don't see it yet, since the island doesn't have any sort of framing or anything, it's just a standard cabinet base. We will install that once we get cabinets installed. So you see the pre-wire running to it though, so we can make sure we get power over there to the island. All right, and then just a quick little view of the kitchen again. Of course, right over there in the corner there, that's where that pantry is going to be. All right, next item of business here, we got the little cafe area is what they call it. Don't really know what you guys plan on doing for this. You guys are gonna have a little light that hangs down right there, depending on what options you selected. If you selected that brush nickel package, you'll have a chandelier light that kind of hangs down there for you guys to put some sort of a table or something here. So other than that, that was really the only structural option here to talk about in the cafe area. Next item of business, let's talk about your windows and doors. So every single window that we install is installed exactly the same way. Doesn't matter what size of window you have. Some of them, if it's like a double window like you have over here, it might just take a few more nails on those top and bottom fins on the outside of the house when they're nailing those on. Otherwise, I'm looking for the same exact stuff as far as installation of your windows. I'm always looking for the low expansion foam around the 3 sides of the window there, which they have. I look for air gaps, make sure I can't see any daylight there. One of the important things that we also check for is to make sure that they have the caulking ran about 4 to 6 inches up the jamb there. It runs all the way across the bottom of the sill. Again, no air gaps, and then it goes 4 to 6 inches up the other side of the jamb. So no issues on this window install. Another thing that I look for is make sure that they're using the right type of tape. We use Typar tape on all of our jobs that we do out here. Typar is a brand that you see that's pretty common within the Pulte network, so we try to stick to the same brand here, but they did a good job on this one. They installed the moisture resistant tape at the bottom of the sill. They use a different type of tape right here, same brand though. This is just a little bit squishier to help those corners of the windows seat in a little bit better. Again, defending against any leak potential that could possibly get into the house. And of course, the last thing I always look for, I always like to make sure that they run the Typar wrap that encompasses the outside of the house. I want to make sure that they run that to the inside of the window. Again, it just helps with that overall drainage plan to make sure that there's no water that's going to be able to get inside the house. Windows and doors are definitely one of the main areas on a house that water likes to get in. So we definitely do a lot to check and make sure that they're installed properly so we don't have those issues. Another thing that you might see that's a common theme throughout your house is these little guys right here, pink dot process. So this is something I like to do, and hopefully all of our other field managers are doing it. This is how we confirm that our vendors are actually in here installing the things the way we want them to be. Again, PCS is Pulte Construction Standards. It's a whole list of stuff that when we have something installed, the vendor has to install it a specific way that we require them. Typically, it's they can come in and install a window per code, but to meet our PCS standards, it might go a little bit above and beyond what code requires. A lot of windows might not call for the caulking at the bottom of the window. Some windows you might just see low expansion foam around all four sides, and we actually require caulking, so that would make it a PCS standard. So a little pink dot there says, hey, I was here, I inspected it. It passed my inspection. If you see a little X anywhere, it means, hey, there was something that did not meet my inspection, something that needed to be repaired, and then they'll come in and fix it to my standards. So you should see quite a bit of that as we walk through the house here. But we talked about the windows. The last thing I want to talk about with your windows is these are low E windows. They are energy efficient windows. One of the questions I get, are they hurricane rated? These are not hurricane rated windows for insurance purposes. You may be able to get a little bit of a discount on your insurance since they are energy efficient windows. That's what that low E stands for. Another cool little feature of all your windows here is they have what they call a solar heat gain coefficient. That's just a really fancy term for the fact that these windows are able to reduce the amount of heat energy that kind of comes into the house. So you might be able to kind of notice a little bit of a tint on the windows there. And that's all it is. It's basically almost an invisible layer, an invisible film you can't really even see, just reduces the amount of heat energy coming into the home. And that's essentially what makes it an energy efficient window. So kind of cool. We'll talk a little bit more about the windows at the pre-closing orientation. All right, told you we talk about the doors. Kind of the same concept here with the doors. We're checking for the same stuff. We want to make sure that they got the low expansion foam all the way around the door. Again, I'm checking for daylight. Make sure I don't see any daylight around the door. You're going to see some daylight right here. Just on the inside of the door there, that's where your weather stripping is going to go to eliminate any of that daylight that we can see currently, but we install that a little bit later on in the build. And then right at the bottom of the door, we're checking for pretty much the same stuff. They're still using that Typar tape.